Unmute us. Are we though? Can the world hear us? Hello, world.
So
I can hear us.
Before we continue on with this combat, I want to shift focus for a moment. And before I do that, I need to ask Gail a very important question about Echo. You recently received a map with a general location of how the troops are sort of spread across the enemy camp. And this happened fairly significantly before the combat actually occurred. Did you find a way to communicate this information to Barnabas and the rest of the dwarves before the battle happened?
Yeah, I think so. I think because it was the night before, so I think he would have, because they were still churning out like the silvered and stuff weapons from the forge and teleporting back and forth that last day. So I think he would have drawn the map as well as he could have remembered it and passed it along for someone to take it to the command camp. Yeah.
The dwarven defensive forces are broken into two major groups. There are the shield dwarves and there are the conscripts from Mirabar. Yeah? And the way that the battle is laid out is the dwarves have some sort of temporary siege fortifications, defensive fortifications, that is, in between them and the enemy, because they know the enemy is going to come down from the north. And Anton and his group are leading the strike force of conscripts that their job is to strike from the side and the back after the enemy has committed to its frontal assault on the dwarven fortifications. So initially, the plan was to kind of lead from the front because Anton is all about that glory. But he receives two pieces of intelligence sort of at the last moment. One, that Kevin and Bevan Kevin and Bathu figured out that there were A, druids in this area, and B, druids that were being like physically controlled by the blighted branches. And secondly, more importantly, he received the rough location of the leader of the enemy forces. So what he does is he wants to maintain the appearance that he is leading from the front because that is good for morale, it's good for business, and it's good for his reputation. So tell me a little bit about the poor sap that he foists his armor off onto.
Oh, no.
Does he now I'm going to let you all kind of decide this for me. Does he like summon up a demon to take it on, or does he like just pick his second in command and say you're wearing my armor now and leading the charge? Like how does he go about this?
In my mind, Anton has always been like the consummate bastard. He would absolutely promote someone that kind of looks like him and would make a big show of giving him his armor to show him that he trusts him and is entrusting him with this responsibility, and then would just because either way, if he dies, then Anton looks like a tactical genius, or he succeeds and Anton gets to steal the credit.
That seems reasonable to me. So the first waves of the orcish attack sort of crash against the shore of the dwarven defenses. And again, for the most part, these are regular orcs with regular orc tactics. It is a bloodbath on both sides, but the dwarves, despite having the numerical disadvantage, as usual, have the tactical advantage of a fortified position and a very strategic and sound defensive plan. I would like each one of you to roll me a 1d20, and depending on how high or low it goes, we're going to determine kind of what happens in that first little bit.
I rolled a
Jeff,
2.
you rolled a 2. Not Victoire, but M, you rolled a 10.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And, okay. So,
okay.
with a 2, we're going to call that something bad. So when the orcs first crash against the defenses of the dwarves, something bad for the dwarves happens. What is it?
It is a feint. There is a hidden force that emerges out of the ground, being like ferried by something, probably the plants, and just sort of erupts out of the ground in the middle of the line.
Even sort of displacing or knocking over some of the defensive fortifications.
Yeah.
M, your roll was 10, which is neither good nor bad. So the battle goes back and forth at that point. The dwarves are not unused to having to plug up holes in the line. They are able to sort of get back shoulder to shoulder, get themselves back in a defensive position. Let me think, is something that happens that kind of swings the momentum back in their favor if you've got something for me.
No, my mind is like empty.
That's totally fair. Again, you got a 10, so it's neither a good nor a bad. Gale, the conscripts are now intended to charge. They're intended to charge in and attack the exposed flanks of the attackers who were supposed to be focusing their entire attention on the fortifications. However, you rolled a 4, which is also kind of a bad thing. Anton, quote unquote, carrying a large battle standard, is in the very, very front of the oncoming charge. Tell me a little bit about how that charge goes.
I think the poor fucker, the armor's not sized for him properly, and he cannot fucking see. And he leads his horse into, when you're charging cavalry, like it's a little, you're supposed to run people over, but I don't think he really hit like the meat of the pack and was thrown from his horse, and no one has seen him since.
So immediately in the first few clashes goes down. Not great for conscript morale. And in fact, we'll say that a good solid number of the conscripts, especially the ones at the back, just like, fuck this, and kind of break and run. Yeah. Attack still functions. It still does kind of what it's supposed to do, and it does wipe away a lot of the outside orcs, but it's not the militarily sound procedure you would expect in a battle like this. These aren't professional soldiers. These are conscripts running forward with spears and swords and sometimes pitchforks. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. In the meantime, Anton is able to kind of hang back as the charge goes, kind of standing in the shadows, you know how it goes. And then he and his party begin to make their way north towards where they believe the general Magenthal to be. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move ourselves back into this combat.